Welcome back. You've made it all the way to Module 4. We've covered a lot in the past couple of modules, and hopefully you're beginning to feel some change happening. Up to this point, we've been diving into the specifics of different types of loans and debts, and covering ideas to address them individually. Now we're going to shift gears a bit and start exploring how those tasks are part of a larger strategy, getting beyond paycheck to paycheck. This is the foundation for financial freedom, and it will be our launching point for everything that's yet to come. So first, let's explain what it means to be living paycheck to paycheck. You've probably heard the term before, or sayings like, money goes out as quick as it comes in, or someone is living hand to mouth. It means that all our money is being spent as fast as we make it. It means that our income is totally consumed by our expenses. In fact, we also use it to describe financial situations that aren't quite even, when your expenses exceed your income, when you're not making enough to cover all the bills. This is how we start accumulating debt and why it's so hard to get out of it. This is when you might hear, I'm struggling to make ends meet, or the popular question, why is there so much month left at the end of the money? And if you feel like this describes your situation, you're certainly not alone. 78% of American workers are living paycheck to paycheck, and many of those that aren't did at some point too. And if you think it only affects low-income people, you'd be wrong. 1 in 4 households making $150,000 or more per year are in the same situation, struggling to get by. You might think that this doesn't sound so bad. Maybe it's sustainable. But in reality, it's paycheck to paycheck living that wears us down, because every financial surprise, expense, or emergency puts us in a hole, creating debt. Because we don't have spare money, the debt gets bigger. And between dealing with debt or worrying about what's going to happen next or how to pay bills, we're constantly under pressure, stressed out, worn out. We start to feel and believe like there's only bad luck. It's an unhealthy place to be. But even worse, sometimes we just accept it. Maybe you've tried hard to break out of the cycle, worked, sacrificed, and yet you find yourself in the same place or even worse off. Maybe you're tired of trying and just believe that you'll always be in debt, that you'll never save any money. The indifference will ensure that nothing changes. And if we don't do something about it, a single bill could send our entire situation spiraling down. But living paycheck to paycheck is not a life sentence. You can break the cycle and get ahead. Even if you're not really at paycheck to paycheck living yet, you can get beyond it, one step at a time. But I'll be honest, it's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work and some serious effort. There are going to be tough decisions, and you will have to make some sacrifices. The question is, do you really want to? Are you fed up with your current situation? Is everyone in your household ready? For those of you with family, is everyone really aware of what the situation is? Are you having those conversations, or are you protecting someone from the truth? I ask because for this to work, everyone has to be on board. Often the steps we'll take will feel small, and we don't want someone to undo progress that we're making. We need to work together. It's worth it though. If you walk with me through this process, if you're willing to endure it, you're going to finally feel what it's like to be free of debt, to live in surplus, and to start feeling free. So here's what we'll cover. I'm going to explain how we break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. I'll cover the 3 components. I'll explain what we can do to immediately jumpstart our progress. We'll look at how we can maximize our income, and then I'll show you how to slash expenses and minimize spending. Then I'll address how we can save money to make sure that we don't take a step backwards during our journey, even while we're paying off debt. And then, of course, I'll share some tools so that you can start this today. As I mentioned, breaking the cycle and getting beyond paycheck to paycheck is simply living below our means, having our expenses be lower than our income. Now, most people think that higher income is the solution, and it's part of it, and we're going to cover that, but it's usually not the key part. In fact, many people are working hard, sometimes multiple jobs, and are already making as much money as they can. That's why we're going to spend more time on the spending side. This is the side that is entirely under our control. This is the side that we can have a dramatic impact on in a short amount of time. It's definitely easier said than done, but amazing things can happen if you're willing. Now, the last thing I want to bring up doesn't really fall into income or expenses. It's something that we can use one time as we're getting into this process. I call this final piece your forgotten piggy bank. So what is your forgotten piggy bank? The theory is that everyone has $500 worth of stuff that they can sell. Experts say that it's probably in your attic or in your basement. Selling off stuff that you don't need, want, or use can be a great way of raising some cash and scrubbing some of your junk out of your inventory. You might have a single item that you're willing to part with that might get you the $500, or you might have to dig a little deeper. Here's a list of the most sellable household items. Old cell phones can be collectible. Even TV remote controls are sought after. Some of your clothes may be old enough to be vintage. Old musical band shirts in particular are fetching good money. And purses, watches, and jewelry get good interest. Even old film cameras are in vogue again. Tools and yard equipment are always useful. I recently sold an old snowblower that didn't even work. Sports equipment and collectibles are sought after. Recyclers will even pay cash for scrap metal by the pound. Get rid of old kitchen gadgets or unneeded baby supplies. And classic video games and computers are commanding high prices. And the list goes on. Do you have an old bicycle that you don't ride? How about a box of old vinyl records? It's probably taking up space, and it could be cash in your hand. Of course, you have to be strategic about where you sell these things. Some sales just don't make sense if the shipping costs are too high. For small items that are easy and cheap to ship, the obvious place is eBay with a large audience. If you sell things on auction, they'll probably sell. Don't worry too much about getting the best price ever. The point is to clear out the clutter and bring in some money. More crafty things can go on Etsy, especially if you can make more of them. Poshmark is a site where you can sell fashion items like clothing. And here's a tip. The U.S. Post Office has flat rate boxes, small, medium, and large. Using these can help you limit your shipping costs. Also, media like books can be shipped out at a media rate, which is significantly cheaper than other options. Of course, large items don't make much sense to mail. Everything from a chair to a painting might be too large to ship. Listing it on a website that limits it to the people that can pick it up might make a lot of sense. Places like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist are based on area. Nextdoor.com can even list them by neighborhood, and the old-fashioned garage sale is another option. By selling stuff that you're not even using, you're bringing in cash, and that's going to make an impact right away. Next, let's talk about maximizing our income. Let's discuss the income that you have right now, your paycheck. Your employer pays you a certain amount of money, and when they do that, they usually take out various things like some money for taxes or benefits or retirement. So the amount of money that you actually receive is a bit less. We want to take a close look at your paycheck to see if there are any tweaks that we can make to eke out as much as possible. Here's a typical pay stub listing what you're paid and the various things that are deducted from your paycheck. You might see things like federal income tax, Social Security, or Medicare. You might have medical benefits and a retirement plan contribution being taken out. What's left is your net pay, the amount you receive in a check or deposited into your bank. And all of those little deductions add up, and you might be able to make a couple of changes. Let's say you earn $30,000 a year. For this income level, the average tax refund is $1,556. This is money that you could have received throughout the year. If you adjust the withholding amount and you get paid every 2 weeks, you could end up with $60 more in each paycheck. Another one is retirement contributions, averaging $1,320 per year. Depending on how important it is for you to focus on debts, it could be worthwhile to pause contributing to a retirement plan. If you pause this, it could mean an additional $50 per paycheck. These two tweaks alone could get you $110 more in each paycheck, a decent step towards getting cash flow positive. These may seem like small adjustments, but you'll see they do add up. Now, instead of just maximizing your current income, you could add new income. Here are a few ways to do that. Since you're already working at an employer, maybe you could work some overtime or take on an additional role. Take advantage of already being plugged in at a place where you can keep an eye out for additional opportunities. Now, going out and getting part-time work somewhere could be an option too. Keep in mind, this could take a little while as you go through the interviewing process and then figure out how to juggle it with your current responsibilities. But it is possible to find flexible work like waiting tables or working a shift as a cashier or a barista. If you end up working somewhere that you shop at or personally use, like a particular store or a gym, you might be able to earn some extra money and get an employee discount. So I touched on some income ideas, but I wanted to do a service to this side of the equation. I mentioned earlier that debt problems require spending solutions, and so you would be forgiven to think that I simply think we can cut our expenses until we reach a solution. I do believe that on an individual basis, we need to keep our spending below our income. However, we also have to take a look at our income and ask, is this everything that I'm capable of? Is your income what you can make conveniently or with as little effort as possible? Or maybe you're working a solid 40 hours a week, but you have mental and physical capacity to work more. Or maybe you're not fully utilizing your training or education in a trade-off for a more casual pace to your work. There are a number of situations where you may feel that you're making a living that you can sustain for the long term. However, if you're leaving something on the table, we need to carefully and openly evaluate what other income options you have. For me, I've been a side hustler my whole life. I've sold hot dogs at racetracks and repaired neighborhood cars. I've done virtual call center work, and I've participated in brainwave studies for money. I bet those researchers were thoroughly impressed with me. Basically, what I'm getting at is that most experts will tell you to look at income opportunities, but I'm going to go beyond that because in many cases, I find that people that I work with are willing to earn more money, but they don't know how. And now it's easier than ever to earn extra money thanks to the rise of the gig economy. Starting can be as easy as downloading an app. Obviously, I can't get into every opportunity here, but I wanted to give you some real examples so that it might inspire an idea for you. One of my friends assembles furniture for people at their homes. He lists his services on Thumbtack and can do 3 to 4 jobs a day. Thanks to the popularity of places like IKEA, he has transitioned from a side hustle to a full-time assembler. Another friend of mine delivers food via a food delivery app on her way home from work. Since the dinner rush starts right as she's ending her workday, she adds a little time to her commute and can earn up to $50 an hour. Her best tip? Wait for the busy time so that the apps pay extra bounties. Then go to a popular place like Chipotle so you can pick up 3 orders at once. Another friend of mine does painting parties. She cuts plywood into squares, brings easels and paints, and maybe most importantly, a case of wine that she also sells on commission to a person's home and has a painting party. As a talented artist herself, she walks a group of eager people through basic painting classes. The participants pay a fee that yields her a nice income, and she advertises on local apps and drums up interest through her Facebook posts. My other friend used to have several dogs. Now, over the years, as her dogs have moved on, she's decided to use some of the dog walking and dog sitting apps to get her fix of dogs and earn some money. Now she walks up to 10 dogs over her lunch breaks, but her favorite moneymaker is boarding the dogs during the spring break vacations. Over a 3-week period in her area, she brings in $10,000 boarding dogs at her home while families go on vacation. She enjoys it because it happens within a relatively short amount of time, and she can use her time off from work to stay home with them. Of course, people need sitters too. My friend has registered with a website where she's a vetted and highly recommended babysitter, specifically for infants, but not exclusively for infants. She works full-time, but then spends a weekend day or evening babysitting kids. Her lowest rate is $20 an hour for the older children, and it goes up to $35 an hour for newborns. My neighbor's kid is also off to a good start learning about business. A couple of years ago, I was using a lawn care service to mow my lawn each week. I have a decent-sized lawn, and so $70 a week was the going rate in my area. This past spring, he asked if he could mow my lawn for $40 a week. It was a deal that I couldn't pass up, and neither could 3 of our neighbors. So, now on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon, he's mowing lawns and making about $40 an hour. And there are countless other side hustles available. One of my favorite resources is the Side Hustle Show podcast hosted by Nick Loper. He interviews people with side hustles and digs deep to understand what you need to do to start and how much money you can make. I'd like to make a strong recommendation for you, though. If you're struggling with debt right now, you need to look exclusively at side hustles that you can start today without any, or at least many, upfront costs. Do the work, trade your time and effort for money, and get paid right away. Once you start going down the side hustle road, it's easy to start being lured in by some of the more elaborate business building opportunities and scalable income. However, all of those take time and involve more risk. Once you're back on stable footing, it can be a great opportunity to consider things that have more upside income potential, even more passive involvement like YouTubing or writing a book or real estate investing. However, the immediate problems with debt require immediate solutions. If you can start driving for a rideshare company or shop for and deliver groceries, do the work now and be paid by the end of the week, that's the only type of side hustle that you should be considering for now. You might find that you enjoy a particular side hustle or have a specific talent for something. As you shed your debt, you can continue to refine and extend on your income earning opportunities. When I spoke previously about cutting expenses, that debt problems require spending solutions, I went there first because that's something that we generally can control. We can decide on a spending adjustment and make a change immediately. But there's only so much that we can cut. The more we cut, the harder it is to find the next thing to cut. There are diminishing returns to cost cutting, and there will eventually be a point where you'll discover that cutting an additional $100 off your spending is much harder than figuring out how to earn an additional $100. In fact, even before you started this journey, you may have already made as many cuts as you can because you are already working on solving your debt problem. If you feel frustrated that your expenses are already as bare bones as you can make them, you should focus your efforts on looking at additional income options. You may feel like you're doing it out of necessity right now, but I continued with side hustles long after I needed them. You might eventually find fulfillment in them as well. If you recall from Module 1, I mentioned that debt problems need spending solutions. When we ignore our spending, it tends to start running away from us. We can usually find financial balance again by bringing our spending back under control. But depending on where our spending has gotten to, sometimes it can take drastic measures. So you may have heard this saying, rich people stay rich by living like they're broke. Maybe you've seen it yourself. You've asked yourself, those people have plenty of money. Why are they so cheap? Well, that's probably why they have plenty of money. So for the next few moments, let's be open-minded about what we really need and consider some pretty radical options. Now I want to talk about the $1,000 challenge. Brian O'Connor wrote a book about him and his family, how they slashed their spending by $1,000 per month. He thinks that most families are spending $1,000 each month that they don't need to, and I want to share a few of his discoveries. First, some things were easy and many things were hard. But the easiest way to cut costs was to cancel cable, reduce their phone plan, and adjust utilities. That cut their spending by $140 a month instantly. Of the hardest things to do was lowering their spending on housing and transportation. It's hard to find ways to make big cuts to your rent or your gasoline costs. On top of that, as you're looking at your options, they can also take a lot of time, weeks, maybe months, to switch between cars and a new apartment. But he did it and cut his costs by an additional $211 per month. Now, Brian hit his target, cutting his spending by $1,001 per month. And as the book title says, without moving under a bridge or living on government cheese. I like his realistic approach captured by his thought, if you want to slash your budget, you don't have to go through all of your bills and obsess over every penny you spend. Start by making a goal to review one bill each month. Look it over. See what you're really paying for and assess if you're getting enough value for the money you've spent. As Brian found out, you may have some things that are really easy to cut and make a big impact. Target those first. These are probably things that are in your wants categories, like life's little luxuries. Things like cable TV. I recently cut the cord and survived, and so can you. In fact, you can still get TV that looks and feels just like cable, except it's a lot less. Philo.com provides the whole experience, including DVR. What about internet and phone? Shop it around. Companies like Republic Wireless offer unlimited calls and texts for just $20 a month. And how about gyms and memberships? That can mean money right back in your pocket. And you can get a great workout from apps like Sworkit or Pocket Yoga, or find videos on YouTube. And if you're willing to rethink vacations by letting last-minute deals decide the destination for you, you could end up saving a lot. Or try the staycation, have a great experience at a fraction of the price. And are you subscribing to things like magazines or storage units or other online services? The big one? Personal spending. Are all those small, quick purchases adding up? Like runs into the convenience store or an expensive beverage? Now, does the $1,000 challenge sound too daunting? How about the 2% rule? This is just a little spending change that could be easier to integrate in your life. The 2% rule is to cut your spending by just 2% each month. Let's say you're earning and spending $30,000 per year. That's $2,500 per month. 2% of that is just $50. You'll cut your spending by $50 each month and each month after that. By the end of the 12 months, your spending will be a staggering $600 lower than it is today. And if you add up all of the spending cuts, it comes out to $3,900 just in the first year. Now, let's say you stop cutting and you just keep your spending the same moving forward. you would be spending $7,200 a year less than you are now. Imagine what you could do with $7,200, or how much progress that would be towards your debts. Does the 2% rule work? Well, it did for the Michaels family. They were earning $65,000 per year and had $108,000 of consumer debt. It took a while, but they did it. How does your situation compare to them? There are probably a number of things that you could pay less for and still get what you need. How about your insurance coverages? If you have an agent, review what you have and make sure it's appropriate. Ask your agent if there are ways to get lower premiums, such as driving behavior monitoring devices or using an umbrella policy. If you have various health insurances, like life, disability, or medical insurance, check to see that you're appropriately covered, but not overinsured. And if you own a property, check to see if your property tax is appropriate. Most local governments provide a process to appeal their assessment if you think it's too high. And it probably won't affect your meals if you buy similar groceries at cheaper prices. You might be able to lower your spending at discount grocers like Aldi or at dollar stores. Depending on how much you buy, a warehouse club might be worth it. And check out your local farmers markets, especially towards closing time when vendors are willing to make significant deals. You might also have a salvage grocery store selling dented canned food or misshapen fruit. And of course, coupons. If a system works for you now, great. But SnipSnap is an app that shows you coupons that might be relevant and also lets you take photos of physical coupons so you don't have to carry them around. And check your utilities. If you live in a deregulated state, you might get cheaper energy prices by switching between providers. There's usually no interruption to your service. You just select the cheapest provider online and the new rates are applied. Sites like electricchoice.com help you compare rates for your area. Also, shopping at a thrift store can be a helpful way to reduce your costs. I check various resale shops in your area as they tend to vary quite a bit. Some in my area focus on clothing, while others have more in home furnishings. And check out free stuff. There's a section on Craigslist of stuff available for free. Or check out freecycle.org where you can find, list, or request things for free. Unfortunately, we can't cover every way to save money, but here's a book that I read with lots of practical, useful tips. In Living Large and Lean Times by Clark Howard, Clark covers tricks for how to spot the best deals at Costco, to getting cheap vacations, and even free cell phone plans. If you're looking for more ideas on everyday ways to save money, this book is full of them. And you should be able to find it at your library for free. Getting your housing situation right-sized could make a big impact on your cash flow. If you own or rent a place, you could rent out a room or get a roommate. If you have family in the area, you might be able to move in with them, even if it's just temporary. It could help you get caught up or get ahead. And of course, you could downsize or just right-size to a place that meets your needs, but nothing more. Hunting around for a cheaper apartment could save you hundreds right away. Now, there are plenty of practical ideas to cut down on our regular expenses, but our discretionary spending usually comes down to us, those small random purchases that can add up to a lot. The change that will really make a difference here is to create an environment that helps us stick to our plan, that avoids the unnecessary purchases. For example, using cash is a great way to make our spending more real, as well as tracking what we have left. Often referred to as the envelope method, you can just put the cash that you're allowed to spend for any category, say eating out or coffee purchases, in an envelope. And when the envelope is empty, no more purchases until the next payday or however you set it up. It may seem like too much effort to carry around a bunch of envelopes every day, but they make wallets designed for this with different pockets and tags. You can even make your own from a coupon or recipe carrier. Another tip is to stick to your list. For example, if you meal plan like a cafeteria and schedule out each meal. And like cafeterias, you can roll over ingredients from the previous day that might be left over, like extra chicken from Taco Tuesday might be in Wednesday salads. When you schedule meals by the day, you can build your shopping list right there too, making it a lot easier than brainstorming an entire list. When I started focusing on debt, I had a lot of support, friends and family. I couldn't have done it alone, and you don't have to either. Find someone who will support you. Sometimes it's nice just to have a couple of conversations to stay on track. And lastly, identify where you spend and try something else. If roaming the mall ends up causing some frivolous purchases, try a day at the state park. Join a group on meetup.com or check your community calendar, which might have movies in the park or neighborhood fairs. And you don't have to be a hermit. What are the things that you really value that you really, really enjoy? Is it time with friends? If so, look at ways to get all of that value, but without the cost. Instead of an evening at the bar, how about an evening on your patio with dinner and drinks? You might go from $60 a person to $20, all without giving up what's most important to you. Inevitably, you're going to be asked by someone to do something that you can't afford, and that's a tricky situation, because revealing that you're struggling with money is hard to admit. If people ask you to join them for dinner, you might be tempted to use an excuse like, "That's not a good time for me." But they might respond with, "When's a better time?" Or if you're asked to go to an event, you might politely decline with, "I really shouldn't," which might have them respond with, "Come on, it'll be fun." These types of statements avoid the real reasons behind our decisions, which can make it easy for people to push back and for us to eventually give in. But I want to share a phrase that's worked for me. It's not in my budget right now. This is a polite way to decline that also says you have other financial priorities, which most people will understand right away. And don't be afraid to be creative on finding ways to cut spending. Stop buying bottled water. Carpooling could reduce your gasoline bill by half or more. If you're not filling up your garbage can, try switching to a smaller one that might be cheaper for the waste pickup. Get a part-time job at a store that you shop at for discounts. Maybe you can do some maintenance chores at your apartment, like lawn mowing or snow shoveling for reduced rent. It can be tempting to stream a movie for $3, but your library has DVDs for free, in addition to magazine subscriptions, classes, and Wi-Fi. If you have some space to do a little gardening, a few vegetables or spices could help reduce your grocery bill. And if you have children, how about swapping for childcare, maybe meals or housing? Slashing spending doesn't mean that you can't express yourself or have style. You could probably make something like these trendy wood stump side tables and stools for a lot cheaper than $208. And maybe you could make your own art for walls or repaint old furniture instead of replacing it. Now, maybe you're motivated. Maybe you've seen everything so far and said, "That's easy." If you really want to start cutting back, like Tiffany from Don't Waste the Crumbs blog and Get Ruthless, here's some more ideas. While it's tough, finding a new home for your pets could save you money, and depending on your situation, they might be better off. How about washing out Ziploc bags and reusing them, or sticking with washable hand towels instead of paper towels? How about shampooing every other day? You can also make your own peanut butter or cut your own hair. How about buying cheap toilet paper and watering down juice drinks? You can skip the laundromat and wash your clothes in a bucket. And you can make your own cleaning solution with vinegar and baking soda. And of course, pursue whatever works for you. Don't worry about social norms. You set the rules for you. And here's another idea that I think a lot of people will consider extreme. What about rethinking holiday gifts this year? Parents spend an average of $422 per child on holiday gifts. A household with 2 children, $844. What about doing a Secret Santa? Each person gives one gift to someone else instead of buying gifts for everyone. Or what about no gifts at all? My family stopped giving gifts at the holidays, and it's so freeing to go into the season without worrying about shopping or budgets. It really makes holidays fun and stress-free. And when I named this program Breaking Free from Debt for Good, I chose the words "for good" because I wanted it to mean permanent, but also that we would be able to do things for people that we care about, that we might finally have the capability to do things for others. So maybe your family would be open to foregoing gifts to help someone else, maybe by grabbing one of those gift request tags for a kid like this one. I'm a 10-year-old boy. I want school snacks, so I'm not the only one not eating during snack time at school. What more needs to be said about that? Maybe we could have a bigger impact on the world this year and still spend less money. This may seem like a lot to do, but the truth is that you've already started cutting your costs. In the previous modules, you've been tackling your debt payments, getting them more affordable by getting better terms or getting them structured in a way that you can handle them. So in reality, you've already started. Now, it might sound strange while we're focused on paying off debt, but we want to have some cash saved for emergencies. A basic savings account is going to help us stay on track when we're hit with a little bit of bad luck, like a car repair or a broken appliance. By working towards saving $1,000, we don't have to worry as much about paying off our debt and then having it rise back up. So how do we save $1,000 while we're paying off debt? Well, to start, let's send the money that we're freeing up here towards both our savings account and our debt in equal parts, 50-50. The money that we're freeing up by cutting our expenses, let's put half of it into savings and apply the other half towards debt. Once the savings account reaches $1,000, let's apply all of the extra cash flow that we're making towards the debt. And don't forget our forgotten piggy bank from the beginning. As we sell off things we don't need towards our $500 target, let's put half of that into savings. With that alone, we'll already have $250 saved. Now we know how to get ahead, how to get beyond paycheck to paycheck. We're going to slash our spending and get our expenses down. And then we're going to maximize our income. But you might be thinking that even after spending a lot of time on it, you might not be ahead by that much. But that's okay. It's not about how much you're getting ahead. It's about just getting ahead. You want to be ahead of your expenses, even if it's just by a little. That means that your cash flow is positive and every little bit helps. When your cash flow is negative and you're falling behind a little bit more each month, you can't help but be in a mindset of scarcity because there's never enough. But once you get beyond paycheck to paycheck by any amount, suddenly you're in surplus. There's a little extra. And while it might not feel like a lot, you'll feel the mindset change that comes with having a little extra, which is abundance. Notice how close scarcity and abundance are. There's really no middle ground. You're either in one or the other. So let's do everything we can to stay in abundance, because it'll mean leaving behind those feelings of stress or resignation and finally give you relief. So we've covered a lot, but I want to stress that we can start small, and even those small steps have huge impacts. Let me show you. Let's say you're making and spending $30,000 a year, and you like a few of the simpler strategies that we discussed, like adjusting your tax withholding, which would be $60 per paycheck, and pausing your retirement contributions, another $50 per paycheck. Maybe you're going to try the 2% rule and cut an additional $50 from your spending each month. That all seems doable, but by the end of your first year, you will have spent $6,780 less than the previous year. And if you stop here and just keep your spending exactly the same, you'll have freed up another $10,000 the following year. Imagine what you could do with that, or how much debt you could be free of. Now, back in the first module, I told you I would tell you my story. As I mentioned, I had a lot of debt, a combination of student loans, credit cards, and a car loan. And at the time, I was splitting an apartment with two other guys, each of us paying $800 a month towards rent. I knew I needed to get serious about my debt, so when our lease was up, I moved out and moved into a detached garage that my friends would affectionately call the garagement. I can tell you that it was pretty rough, but as my father said, it's no worse than camping. It was the rent, just $300 a month, that made all of the difference. That freed up $500 a month that I could direct back towards my debts, allowing me to slowly but surely pay them off. One change, although a drastic one, let me break out of living paycheck to paycheck. And countless others have done it too, on normal incomes without winning the lottery, like Delane Moore with $45,000 of debt and a $30,000 salary. And so she started cutting her coffee run $100 a month, doing get-togethers at home. She refinanced her car and cut the cord on cable. Eventually, she was paying $1,000 a month towards her debt. But as tempting as it is to just jump into slashing expenses, there's something that everyone did first. Delane notes, I created my first ever budget. This is where she found those opportunities like coffee costs. And here's a snippet from Tiffany, who runs the Don't Waste the Crumbs blog. She explains how she cut her monthly expenses in half. First and foremost, she notes, see where your money is going. If you don't know what you are spending your money on, you won't know where to cut expenses. So we have to start there. Let's find out where we're spending and then start scrubbing it to find serious savings. So that brings us to our assignment. We're going to list where our money is going, our regular expenses. Then we can scrub out the things that we don't need. You might already know, or you might need to go back and check your credit card or bank statement. Maybe you just need to start tracking your expenses for a month. Put the amount that you spend each month into the appropriate category, like your monthly cell phone or cable bill, your mortgage or rent payment. If you don't see an appropriate category, use one of the lines marked Other Expenses. And at the very top, enter how much money you bring in each month. but you might have to check your pay stub to find out how much is being deducted for taxes and retirement plans. Once you have this form filled out, look through the list and pick one thing that you can reduce or even cancel. Maybe cable television is an easy one for you, or maybe it's eating out. Just pick one and work on cutting it down or out completely. Once you get that accomplished, enter in the new monthly amount that you're going to spend in that category. Then pick the next thing that you can tackle. And if you're using the 2% plan, figure out what 2% of your spending is and target that dollar amount. Before you know it, you'll be slashing expenses all over the place. So with your worksheet, we're going to go through this simple process. Identify where we're spending money. Then we'll make a cut and put that extra money towards our savings and our debts. Then we'll choose another category to tackle. Little by little, we'll be getting beyond paycheck to paycheck and finally be getting ahead. And getting one step ahead is the key to breaking free for good.